Just 3 minutes ago, the entire political stage in the United Kingdom was turned upside down. In a moment that no one expected, not even his own supporters, Nigel Farage was declared the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, live. On air. The country stood still. Crowds watching the broadcast gasped. Journalists scrambled to confirm what had just happened. And perhaps most shocking of all, Labour's Keir Starmer was caught on camera, standing completely silent and frozen. Speechless, as if history had just punched the air out of him. This wasn't just a leadership change. It was a political earthquake. This wasn't a normal afternoon in Parliament. Tension had already been rising over the past few days. Reports hinted at something brewing beneath the surface, a secret alliance, heated closed-door talks, and a power struggle that many believed would fizzle out. But this morning, things took a sharp turn. The House of Commons was called into an emergency session. Cameras rolled, media outlets went live, and politicians looked unusually nervous. Something big was coming. Yet, not even the most seasoned political reporters expected what was about to unfold. At exactly 11:57 a.m., Speaker of the House rose to address the chamber. There was a brief pause, the kind that feels like the air itself has stopped moving. Then came the words, "With the support of the majority and in accordance with the constitutional process, we now recognize Nigel Farage as Prime Minister." Gasps filled the chamber. Some MPs stood up, others sat back in disbelief. And at that exact moment, millions watching across the UK saw the breaking banner flash on their screens. Breaking, Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister. Within seconds, the news spread like wildfire. Social media exploded. The term, Farage PM, began trending globally. News anchors fumbled for words. It was the kind of moment that defines a generation, but how exactly did this happen? The answer lies in what many are calling the most strategic political maneuver of the decade. Just 48 hours earlier, rumors surfaced that Farage's Reform UK party had been in talks with a group of conservative backbenchers, individuals frustrated by their party's direction and leadership. Quietly and quickly, Farage built a coalition. With recent by-election victories tipping the numbers ever so slightly, the balance of power shifted. This new coalition, calling itself a stability bloc, argued that the current leadership under Labour had failed to address key issues, the economy, border control, and energy independence. But it's important to note that this wasn't a general election. No, this was a parliamentary move, completely legal, though rarely used. Similar to how leadership shifts happen in other Westminster systems, this was a case of the sitting government losing the confidence of the House. Once the motion passed, which it did, just moments before Farage was declared, the door was open for new leadership. Still, few expected it to happen so quickly. Just hours before the announcement, Keir Starmer had spoken with confidence, dismissing the rumors as political fantasy. His office released a short statement saying, "The government remains stable. We will not entertain distractions." But by the afternoon, it was already too late. The coalition had reached the number it needed. And when the Speaker made the declaration official, history changed in real time. Nigel Farage stepped forward. To accept the role, he did something unusual. He paused. He looked across the chamber, then directly at Keir Starmer. Cameras zoomed in. Starmer's face was tight, pale, and unreadable. He didn't shout. He didn't shake his head. He didn't speak. He just stared, frozen in place. For many watching, that moment said it all, not just a change in power, but a complete shock to the system outside Parliament. The reactions were immediate. Protesters gathered near Westminster within minutes. Supporters with Reform UK flags began cheering in the streets. Others looked stunned, holding phones up with disbelief. "Is this real?" one woman asked a news reporter. "This can't be real." But it was. Nigel Farage, once seen as a fringe politician, was now holding the highest office in the land. Now, attention is turning toward what comes next, what Farage will do in his first hours, how Starmer and Labour will respond, and what this surprise shift means for the people of Britain. But one thing is already clear, Politics in the UK will never be the same again, asterisk, as the cameras continued to roll and Farage stood at the dispatch box accepting his new role. All eyes slowly turned to one man, Keir Starmer. Just moments earlier, he had been the Prime Minister. Now, without a vote from the public, without even time for a press conference, he had been politically dethroned. And he hadn't said a single word. Keir Starmer was still seated when the announcement hit. No advisors at his side. No gesture of protest. Just silence. That silence was louder than any speech he could have given. The same man who had confidently defended his government only the day before now looked like the ground had been ripped out from under him. His lips tightened. His jaw clenched. And then, slowly, he stood, not to speak, but to leave. No statement. No attempt to challenge. Just a quiet walk out of the chamber, surrounded by flashing cameras and unanswered questions. For hours afterward, Starmer remained out of sight. Downing Street was locked down, with only a few senior Labour MPs seen coming and going. The press waited outside number 10, but the black door never opened. What followed was a swirl of speculation. Was he preparing a resignation speech? Was he calling for legal review? Had he been blindsided, or had he been warned? Sources inside Labour say the events of the last 48 hours had taken even the inner circle by surprise. Some MPs had sensed unrest, especially among frustrated centrist factions, but few thought it would lead to a total collapse of confidence. A secret no-confidence vote had reportedly been in the works for weeks, yet most believed it would fizzle without enough support. But Farage's rapid negotiation with defecting Tory MPs changed everything. He offered them something Starmer couldn't. A unified front and a strong, simple message: take back control. Labour insiders now describe a party in emergency mode. Within an hour of Farage's confirmation, several high-ranking Labour officials resigned from leadership roles. Others scrambled to organize a response. One senior MP was overheard saying, "We didn't just lose power, we lost control of the narrative." Starmer's silence only made things worse. Voters were confused. Loyal MPs felt abandoned. And political opponents were already painting the former Prime Minister as weak, indecisive, and outplayed. The public response was equally divided. Some praised Starmer for remaining calm and not inciting chaos. Others accused him of cowardice for not fighting back in the moment. Social media was flooded with split opinions. Hashtags like #Starmer speechless, #Farage PM, and #silent exit began trending within minutes. Memes circulated showing a frozen Starmer with captions like, "Leadership lost in real time." Despite the criticism, some Labour supporters argued this wasn't a loss, it was a betrayal. They claimed the coalition that backed Farage didn't represent the people, and that democracy had been bypassed through a backroom deal. Petitions began circulating online calling for an immediate general election. Several constitutional experts were brought onto national news shows, trying to explain the legality of the move while acknowledging its rare and dramatic nature. By early evening, a single statement was finally released from Starmer's office. It read, "Today's events mark a turning point in British politics. While I respect the constitutional process, I believe the people of this country deserve a voice. I will speak more soon, not just for my party, but for every citizen watching this unfold." That short message was enough to calm some nerves, but it left many wanting more. The big question now: what will Starmer do next? Will he step aside from party leadership and make room for a new voice? Or will he fight back, regroup Labour, and prepare for a public showdown with the new Prime Minister? For now, the answers remain unclear. But one thing is certain: Keir Starmer is no longer in control, and Nigel Farage isn't wasting any time. While Farage is expected to speak from Downing Street in the coming hours, all eyes remain on Starmer. His next move could shape not just the future of the Labour Party, but the very direction of British democracy itself. Does he have one more fight left in him? Or has the curtain already closed on his chapter in political history? We'll find out soon, and so will the rest of the world. Just 1 hour after he was declared Prime Minister, Nigel Farage stepped out of number 10, Downing Street, and faced the cameras with a smile that spoke volumes. The man who had once Been seen as an outsider, a disruptor, a protest politician, now stood before the British people as their leader. The crowd outside was a mix of cheers and protests, but Farage looked completely calm. With the Union Jack waving behind him and a sea of microphones in front, he gave his first official words as Prime Minister, and every sentence carried weight. Farage began with a message aimed directly at the public. Today is not just about me. Today is about the millions who felt unheard. Today, your voice returned to power. He thanked the coalition MPs who backed him and promised a government that would be bold, honest, and unafraid. But then, without wasting time, he went straight into action mode. The first order of business, he declared, is to secure our borders and put British people first again. It was a line that echoed his long-standing political image, but this time, it came with the full authority of the Prime Minister's office. In the following 10 minutes, Farage outlined 5 immediate reforms that he said would begin within the first 48 hours. Each one sent shockwaves across the political world. 1. Emergency border controls. Farage announced the immediate deployment of additional security forces to UK ports and the English Channel. He promised a temporary freeze on new asylum applications while a new British First Immigration Bill was drafted. The days of open-door chaos are over, he stated. Point 2. Repeal of EU-aligned regulations. Though the UK officially left the EU in 2020, Farage stated that Brussels' fingerprints still exist in our law books. He announced an emergency order to begin removing leftover EU-era regulations that, according to him, were holding back British businesses and workers. 3. Freeze on foreign aid budget. Farage called the UK's foreign aid spending an insult during a cost-of-living crisis. He announced a full review and temporary freeze of all non-critical foreign aid transfers, vowing to redirect those funds to NHS worker salaries and domestic infrastructure. Point 4. National Energy Independence Plan. One of his boldest declarations was a full review of green energy commitments. We need power, not pledges, he said. His new policy will support UK-based fossil fuel production, including North Sea drilling, while reviewing all overseas energy import contracts. Point 5. General election proposal, with a twist. Farage stunned even his supporters by proposing a national election within 90 days, but only if Parliament does not cooperate with his reform agenda. He challenged the House to stand with the people or face them at the ballot box. This hard-hitting speech wasn't just a list of promises, it was a political warning. Farage spoke with the confidence of a man who didn't just win power. He seized it. His tone was defiant. His message was clear. He's not asking for permission. He's already moving. While some viewers praised his speech as strong and inspiring, others were quick to raise alarms. Human rights groups immediately warned that halting asylum applications could violate international law. Environmental groups criticized the shift away from green energy. EU officials released a short statement saying they were monitoring the new UK government with great interest. Inside the UK, reactions were just as divided. Supporters celebrated in city squares, waving Reform UK flags and singing national anthems. But in London, Manchester, and Brighton, protest groups organized within hours, calling the reforms extreme, dangerous, and rushed. Still, the most shocking part of Farage's rise might not be his policies, but how ready he was to act. Analysts believe his coalition plan had been quietly forming for weeks, perhaps even months. His speeches, drafts of legislation, and policy staff were apparently ready to launch the moment the speaker called his name. Critics worry that this speed bypasses democratic debate. Supporters argue it's a sign of leadership after years of political gridlock. What no one can deny is that Farage came into power swinging, and with a plan that the nation now watches what happens next. Attention is turning to Parliament. Will MPs resist him, causing a snap election? Or will some go along with his agenda to keep their seats safe? The coming days will be crucial. Farage ended his speech with a line that will likely be quoted for years to come: "This isn't about left or right anymore. It's about right and wrong. And I won't let fear decide the future of this country." With those words, he turned and walked back into number 10. Behind him, the doors closed. In front of him, the path ahead, uncertain, explosive, and Already rewriting British history, asterisk as Nigel Farage's speech ended and the door to number 10 closed behind him, the world reacted, and it reacted fast. Within minutes, #FaragePM had taken over every major platform, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, even international news broadcasts. But the reaction wasn't just digital. It was physical. It was emotional. It was explosive, in the streets of Britain. Scenes of celebration clashed with scenes of fury. In the north of England, supporters gathered in public squares, waving Union Jacks and holding signs that read, "Finally, our voice," and "Power back to Britain." Many saw Farage's rise as a victory for the common man, a break from what they viewed as a disconnected political elite. "We've waited years for this," said one woman in Sunderland. "Now it finally feels like someone's listening." But in London, Brighton, Manchester, and Glasgow, the mood was entirely different. Thousands of protesters marched toward government buildings. Chants of "Not my Prime Minister" echoed through the streets. Activists held signs that read, "Democracy hijacked," and "We didn't vote for this." In Trafalgar Square, a spontaneous sit-in began, drawing in students, civil rights groups, and climate activists who feared the swift reversal of progressive policies. The police presence increased by the hour. Riot vans lined Parliament Square. Officers were deployed across major cities to keep the peace as tensions grew. By evening, small clashes broke out between Farage supporters and anti-government demonstrators. No major injuries were reported. But the tension in the air was clear. This wasn't just politics anymore, it was a cultural showdown. Social media exploded with divided opinion. One viral video showed a young man crying outside Parliament, holding a sign that read, "I was born under Farage. What future do I have?" Another clip showed an elderly man waving a Reform UK flag, shouting, "This is the best day of my life." The comment sections were filled with arguments, support, fear, and shock, often all in the same thread. Meanwhile, across the globe, leaders began to respond. The White House released a carefully worded statement: "We respect the democratic processes of our allies and will work closely with Prime Minister Farage on mutual interests." However, insiders reported that Washington was deeply concerned about the future of UK-US climate and trade agreements. In Brussels, the European Union's tone was sharper. A top EU official tweeted, "The UK has chosen a dangerous path backward. We are watching." Several EU leaders expressed frustration, especially over Farage's plans to dismantle EU-aligned laws. France's president reportedly called an emergency cabinet meeting to review border and trade policies related to the UK and Ireland. The reaction was especially tense. The Irish government demanded immediate talks over the Northern Ireland Protocol, fearing that Farage's leadership could destabilize peace agreements. One Irish minister said, "We need clarity, and we need it now." In financial markets, the pound dropped sharply by 2.3% within hours of Farage's speech. Investors expressed uncertainty over his policies and their long-term impact. London Stock Exchange saw volatility, with energy and defense stocks rising while green technology companies took a hit. World media outlets dedicated their primetime slots to the story. CNN called it the UK's Trump moment. Al Jazeera described it as a populist power grab. The BBC tried to stay neutral but acknowledged the moment as one of the most unexpected shifts in modern British political history. Back in the UK, public institutions began bracing for impact. University leaders worried about funding changes. The NHS feared sudden restructuring. Civil servants quietly began updating emergency transition documents, many of which hadn't been opened in years. Trade unions prepared statements. School teachers organized town hall discussions. Supermarkets even prepared for potential panic buying after rumors swirled about future import restrictions, and yet, for every fearful voice, there were just as many who felt empowered. Farmers from the Midlands posted videos thanking Farage for finally standing up to globalist controls. Small business owners wrote open letters of support. Veterans groups sent congratulatory messages. Many said this was what Brexit should have been, a full return to British control, with No apologies, even celebrities and public figures weighed in. Some praised the bold change. Others condemned it as a threat to the nation's stability. One well-known actor tweeted, "This isn't a movie. This is our future," and it just got darker. As night fell, the UK was a nation awake, emotionally, politically, and socially. Every news station ran extended coverage. Commentators argued over legalities, ethics, and the will of the people. Everyone was asking the same question: is this the start of a new era or the beginning of a national crisis? Whether you were watching from a living room in Birmingham, a pub in Yorkshire, or a flat in Edinburgh, the message was the same. Something massive had changed. And the consequences were just starting to show.